Good evening. The biggest oil rig in the world, the rig called Ocean Ranger, is lying at the bottom of the sea. It collapsed and sank off the coast of Newfoundland in a fierce Atlantic gale. Missing and presumed drowned are 84 people, the Ranger's entire crew. 10 bodies have been sighted, but no survivors have been found. We have several reports, the first from Barbara Yaffe.
The Ocean Ranger. This is the oil rig that disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean sometime early this morning. It's a floating platform about the size of a football field anchored to the sea bottom. It first suffered listing problems last week. When it went down today, the 84 men on board took to 3 lifeboats. It's unlikely that any of them survived. The Ocean Ranger was one of 3 rigs working this winter off Newfoundland's east coast, drilling on the Hibernia site. It's a rough environment, and it was in the middle of a wicked winter storm that the rig capsized today. Helicopters were at the site of the disaster within a few hours. The helicopters were sent from armed forces bases around the east coast and were later joined by fixed-wing aircraft. Supply boats have also been searching the area for survivors. The only first-hand reports on the disaster have come from these search crews.
We saw a few bodies, and we continued our search. A couple of life rafts were overturned, and as the search went on, myself and the other helicopter, we came across various amounts of debris and a few other bodies and life rafts.
Was there any sign of life there?
Not that we could see, no.
You tried to make a rescue. You tried to pick up one of the bodies. What happened?
It wasn't a rescue. The first body we came upon, we tried to lower a SAR-tech down to see if he can see if there's any life, and we put him in the water, but the waves are about 40, 50 feet, and he was close enough to ascertain that there was no life. The fellow was dead, and he was fully dressed in his immersion suit and had a life vest on, and we attempted to recover, but it was too dangerous for our SAR-tech, so we brought him back in, continued our search for possible survivors.
Mobil Oil, the rig's operator, hasn't been able to explain why the rig went down.
We really have very few details. We just know that we were contacted early in the morning, that the men had gone to their lifeboats. We then we dispatched 2 helicopters to the area. We have sighted 2 of the lifeboats and a life raft. We have not yet located the rig.
The province plans to hold a full inquiry into this tragedy. Right now, there are very few answers and a great many questions. And tonight, for the relatives of those people who were working aboard the Ocean Ranger, all there is the agony of hoping against hope. Barbara Yaffe, CBC News, St. John's.
As night fell along the Newfoundland coast, the search for survivors and bodies was suspended. Families of the rig workers remained silent, as though by some miracle there would be survivors. Of the 84 people on board, about 54 are from Newfoundland. 20 are from other provinces and 10 are Americans. But tonight, while people wait, there are serious questions being raised about the safety of the Ocean Ranger and evidence it had a brush with disaster last week. The rig had a record of accidents to the extent that members of the crew developed a very low opinion of it.
Call it the Ocean Danger. It was pretty well common knowledge that people call it that. It's been called that for over a year now anyways. The Ocean Danger.
A week ago, St. Aubin was on the Ocean Ranger when something went wrong with the ballast, and it developed a severe list to one side.
We had an abandoned boat alarm, and we went to the boat stations, but what happened was that the people on the low side of the rig, in case the rig tilted over on that side, they left their stations and came up all to the one station. So we had approximately 63 people that showed up at that boat station, and the boat is only supposed to hold 50. And there were also not enough life preservers. There were about 10 people walking around without life preservers. And also, we were there for about 10 minutes, and during that time they couldn't start the boat on the motor. Start the engine on the lifeboat.
But at a news conference tonight in St. John's, Mobil insisted that its safety measures are up to standard.
I've heard comments on lack of safety procedures on the Ocean Ranger, which surprises me, because we do watch these. To my knowledge, the safety procedures were adequate.
But in recent weeks, there is growing evidence that safety has been a concern all the way around. The provincial government has been scrambling, trying to put in place some safety legislation, although there's been no move yet to suspend drilling on 2 other rigs operating in the same area, rigs that rode out last night's storm. And the federal government also appears concerned. 2 weeks ago, it put an inspector on board the Ocean Ranger, and while there is no hint of what his report may contain, it will no doubt form an important part of the lengthy investigation that will now follow. Whit Fraser, CBC News, St. John's.
There were angry questions in the House of Commons today about that federal inspection of the Ranger. And Mike Duffy has that story.
Friends of those who lost their lives.
The House of Commons had no sooner passed its unanimous expression of sorrow at the tragedy than opposition MPs were on their feet, demanding answers to suggestions that government inspectors knew the rig was dangerous.
The alarm on the Ocean Ranger was sounded last week because the rig was listing 15 degrees, and indeed the order was given to abandon ship. May I ask the Minister, in view of the tragic loss of life and the fact that the unsinkable Ocean Ranger has in fact sunk, if his department investigated that alarm, the cause of that alarm, and is he now able to report to the House?
I am informed that an inspector from the Canada Oil and Gas Lands Act administration did inspect the platform in the last 2 weeks. I have not a copy of that report, and I cannot give any particular information in that respect.
Given the fact that this rig contained 85 people on the North Atlantic this time of the year, I find it incredible that the minister responsible would not have seen these inspection reports.
Late this afternoon, the government announced there will be a formal inquiry into today's disaster. But the Energy Department says it will not make public its inspection report on the seaworthiness of the Ocean Ranger until the inquiry actually begins. Opposition MPs say they'll continue to press for its release because they say that report could show that prompt action by the federal government might have prevented today's tragedy. Mike Duffy, CBC News, Ottawa.